becoming a problem more than the Crimean Peninsula, global warming, and leaving for 5 days for your wife's pregnancy. Tanking in the NBA.
Consecutive game. That ties an NBA record, tying the Cleveland Cavaliers the year after LeBron James left.
Douglas working with LeBron James.
But what is the real problem for tanking?
In the new ESPN The Magazine, one anonymous NBA GM went as far as telling our ESPN basketball insider Jeff Goodman, quote, "Our team isn't good enough to win, and we know it. So this season, we want to develop and evaluate our young players, let them learn from their mistakes, and get us in position to grab a great player. The best way for us to do that is to lose a lot of games. This draft is
Losing games. Is that really okay?
Tanking problem is becoming increasingly more evident in the NBA. You have the Magic, you have the Pistons, you have the Bucks, you have the Sixers, you have the Timberwolves. You have a lot of teams taking worse players who make less money with shorter contracts, so maybe, just maybe, they can land a big name player. Okay? The Knicks were the first ones to really do this and try this as a strategy. What they got to the Eastern Conference Finals. They got swept in the Eastern Conference Finals. They're barely making the playoffs now. They're the 8th seed, and they got kicked out of the first round last year. Okay, because they tanked. They got Amari Stoudemire, they got Carmelo Anthony, and look what happened. Nothing happened. Look at the teams at the top of the NBA. Well, the top two teams in both conferences, the Thunder, the Spurs, the Pacers, and the Heat. None of them tanked. None of them decided, you know what, we're just going to scrap this season. You can't do that to an NBA team's fans. You can't do that to a team fan. You have season ticket holders, consistent season ticket holders, who aren't just going to just stop being season ticket holders just because you decided to tank, just because you thought it'd be a better idea to lose every single game you play. I'm not saying these players want that to happen, but what are you going to do? Look at the Sixers. They lost 26 straight games. Look at what they have to work with. Other than Thaddeus Young, who is barely a star, he's a role player. He'd be like the 8th man on some teams in the NBA. And you have Michael Carter-Williams, who's really the only shining thing about that team. And even he's not that good. And then you have a bunch of D-League players, literally D-League players. If you took Michael Carter-Williams and Thaddeus Young outside of that lineup, I would think any team in the Final Four right now could beat him. I do. And I think that's a legit thing to say. Tanking in the NBA is bad for multiple reasons. The major reasons are the fans. They don't get the product they're promised. They're promised the best product possible in Philadelphia, in Detroit, in Milwaukee, where have you. And they're not getting that. Teams that lose 26 straight games don't get that. Now, the Suns earlier in the year were tanking, and now they're in the playoff hunt. The Cavs were not tanking, and now they are tanking. So that's kind of how they've switched. Tanking is not an okay thing. I think that's why they have the NBA lottery. A lot of people bash, oh, the lottery's stupid, it should go to the team with the worst record. No, it shouldn't. Because then you're going to have more and more teams want more and more to tank. And then that's just going to create even more problems. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be some sort of regulation amongst tanking. Alright, I remember the Chris Paul trade to LA, not the Clippers, to the Lakers. That got canceled because that was going to make the Lakers too good, according to David Stern. He should do that, but the other way. Okay? Players like Brandon Jennings should not be able to be traded away to the Pistons from the Bucks. Players like Evan Turner, LaVoy Allen shouldn't have been allowed. That trade should not have been allowed for Danny Granger. And if it was, Danny Granger shouldn't have been allowed to be released. Okay, 2 days later. Alright? Dwight Howard, that trade, that deal, that was alright, I guess, for the Magic. But it did not really. That was tanking on an even grander scale. Tanking in the NBA was not used back in the 90s. Was not used back in the early 2000s. It's just become really popular lately because the teams like the Boston Celtics, who were involuntarily tanking. They were tanking, but they had no idea that they were tanking. They were just bad. And then Ray Allen, and they signed Kevin Garnett because they had the books to do it. They had the money to do it. They signed them and won an NBA championship. Ever since then, super teams and tanking teams have been going all over the place. And in my opinion, that's the real tanking problem.